It's a question that's been eluding police, family, and a university community for nearly 2 decades. What happened to Cindy Song?
She vanished.
18 years later, the question remains. As memories fade, the details surrounding the case have become jumbled. Everyone who knew Cindy is long gone. Her family is out of the country, and the original investigators working the case are now retired. Even Cindy's pictures are minimal, limited to those that were used for her missing poster and on international headlines. Everything that portrays Cindy the person, the athlete, the free spirit, the artist, is contained in old articles and websites on the fringes of the internet. But still the question of where she could be, or maybe more appropriately where she could have went, is being asked, as Cindy Song's missing persons case remains one of the most notorious in central Pennsylvania. It's late on a Wednesday night, but the streets of downtown State College are filled with students partying and celebrating Halloween. Cindy Song is a junior at Penn State, and she's dressed in a bunny rabbit costume. She joins friends Stacy Paik and Lisa Kim at Players Nightclub. They drink and dance the night away. As the night winds down, last call is called, and Stacy, Lisa, and Cindy head to Park Hills Apartments, where they stop at a friend's house to play video games. A couple hours later, Stacy drives Cindy home at the State College Park apartment complex. They grab something to eat at the Unimart on the way. She watches Cindy walk towards her apartment before driving off.
She goes home, then she just disappeared. There was no more trace of her.
Cindy was last seen walking up a staircase like this towards her apartment. Evidence indicates that she made it inside, dropping some things off before heading back out. But where was she going and why? The trail ends at Cindy's doorstep, and the mystery begins. Yoon Song, known to most as Cindy Song, was born and raised in Seoul, South Korea. She was known to be open-minded and fiercely independent, but friends say that she was also studious and willing to work hard to achieve her goals. In order to pursue a better education, Cindy moved to Springfield, Virginia to live with her aunt and uncle at age 15. She received good grades in high school and was an athlete, playing tennis and running track. She also discovered a passion for the arts, writing on her blog her love for art, film, music, photography, and dancing. By the time she got into Pennsylvania State University, Cindy decided to study integrative arts for her major. Old articles found online show that Cindy was thriving in all aspects of university life. According to friends, she was outgoing, attractive, and optimistic, the personality that mixes well with everyone. It wasn't long before Cindy was surrounded by close friends, one of them being Richard Che, who swept Cindy off her feet and into an off-campus apartment where they lived together. But things didn't last. Friends say Richard abruptly ended the relationship, moving out of that apartment in September 2001, leaving Cindy heartbroken and in bad shape, but determined to move on. Cindy soon found a new roommate, Youngju, or Catherine, to move in with, and the pair started to bond. She started going to therapy, taking medication, and writing about her struggles with relationships, self-love, and mental health. Things were looking up for Cindy in the weeks before her disappearance. She just bought a new computer and Britney Spears concert tickets for the following week, and had applied for a graphic design internship in the spring. She had a lot to look forward to, which is why, when the question came up of whether or not Cindy was involved in her own disappearance, friends remained headstrong that it wasn't so. And after looking closer, investigators agreed.
We knew that, she was planning ahead. She was looking ahead at different events, so for her to just disappear like that would be unusual. The theory is, yes, that she was abducted and killed.
In the afternoon hours of Thursday, November 1st, 2001, Cindy's roommate, Catherine Kim, arrives back from an extended trip to visit family in Philadelphia. News reports from the time quote her as saying she'd expected to see Cindy at home as they planned to catch up before going out with friends the following evening. But Catherine comes to find an empty house, with the door locked from the outside. She figures Cindy went out for a bit and will be back soon. But 2.5 days pass and Cindy doesn't show up at home, class, or work. When she misses her Saturday shift at the Seoul Korean Garden restaurant, friends decide it's time to call police.
Typically in a missing person, you want to be on that right away.
But because it's a weekend, patrol officers handle the call, leaving 2 full days to go by until lead investigator Brian Sprinkle got to the case.
Unfortunately, because it wasn't reported, it didn't land on my desk until Monday morning.
It isn't until 4 days after Cindy goes missing that detectives get the notice she's gone.
I was already kind of behind the 8 ball with that.
They inspect her apartment on the morning of Monday, November 5th.
Nothing looked out of place, but she was just gone.
Investigators find very little inside.
We were able to find the backpack that she had with her, and we found that her fake eyelashes that she was wearing that night.
But that was it. No purse, wallet, ID card, or keys. Brian Sprinkle, now a retired detective, at the time had very little to start with. So we started talking with family and friends.
Through our investigation, we started at the inner circle of friends and family and worked our way out.
Including a closer look at the ex-boyfriend, Patrick. Friends say that he left Cindy devastated after their breakup just a couple months earlier, but
There wasn't any indication that he was involved in any way.
and with family members being out of state and country,
There was nobody. We interviewed all of her close friends, co-workers, and there was nothing to indicate that anybody close to her was involved in this.
police then started to lean towards darker possibilities. Perhaps Cindy was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe someone was stalking her.
We thought maybe that, being that the Giant grocery store was directly across the street from her complex and was open 24 hours, that maybe there was something she needed that she had to run over there and get.
Friends say that it wasn't unusual for Cindy to go to the Giant store at all hours of the night. But there was no footage of her there, and no purchases had been made on her credit cards.
Another theory was that somebody came to the door.
But with her door locked on the outside, police say that it was clear Cindy wanted to leave, so she probably wasn't snatched at her doorstep. A promising lead came in a few days later from someone in Philadelphia who claimed to have seen a woman matching Cindy's description yelling for someone to help her as a mysterious man forced her into his car. The woman gave the man's description to a sketch artist and a composite was released. But inconsistencies in her story led police to stop pursuing the tip.
I don't know if it was a hoax, but it wasn't Cindy. We were able to determine that it wasn't Cindy.
Eventually, the disappearance of Cindy gained a national audience.
We were getting leads all over the place. Like, I got a lead that she was seen sitting in the audience of The Price is Right.
But none of them proved reliable. Given the abnormalities, police suspected foul play early on in the case. The grim search for a body started within days after Cindy was reported missing.
We started around the complex.
From dumpsters, to dog parks, to the woods surrounding Cindy's apartments, volunteer rescue workers from around the state came to State College to help police with a search for Cindy's body.
I think we have a good chance of if anything is in there, we'll find it.
Oh, listen, Doug, it's not freshly done.
We were up in the state police helicopters doing aerial searches. We had volunteers coming in, search and rescue teams coming in, doing grid searches throughout that North Atherton Street area. And unfortunately didn't find anything.
Despite the fact we've searched the area, twice already, just the fact that we're out there still trying.
Cindy's body was never found, and police became agitated.
It was very frustrating. We had search parties out all the time looking for her in different areas, and it was a very frustrating case.
Within a matter of weeks, Cindy Song's disappearance received international attention. Being an international student herself, the case required FBI attention, and the Korean consulate got involved.
And we take delight in your presence.
Her grieving mother, Bunsoon, and brother Kiho had flown in from South Korea to aid the search.
She lives every day hoping that it's not real.
And quickly found fault with the investigation.
It's a cultural thing. I understand that they were upset and frustrated. They didn't understand how things worked here in the U.S.
Feeling that police were focusing too much on due process and too little on finding Cindy, the family hired New York-based attorney Jin Han to represent their concerns.
It is time that a true investigation of this case be commenced.
Together, and with the support of multiple student organizations, they formed a group called the Coalition for the Search for Cindy Song.
This place should be covered top to bottom with Cindy's face.
The group held a press conference in the months following Cindy's disappearance, accusing the police of negligence and racial bias.
And we would ask all of you to not give up and continue with the concern.
The bottom line is we've done everything in our power that we could in this case.
We had cultural differences, we had language barriers. The other issue we had was missing persons cases aren't crimes. So without a crime, you can't get search warrants, you can't get court orders.
Bonsoon even took a petition to the governor's office in Harrisburg with 15,000 signatures, demanding the state police take over the investigation full-time. Soon, the Ferguson Township Police Department cut off all communication with the family out of frustration.
It was just heartbreaking that this family had to come all the way halfway across the world to try to find their daughter, and there was nothing that could be done. There just was no clues that the police were finding, that they were sharing, that, hey, they had an idea.
Before John Clay was WTAJ's evening anchor, he worked as a reporter in our State College Bureau and was responsible for reporting on Cindy Song's disappearance.
There was no explanation that made any sense as to where she might have gone, who might have taken her. No leads really developed that led anywhere.
Having been there for every significant moment during the investigation, Clay says that he became involved personally as he watched her family and surrounding community cope with Cindy's loss.
Just like the police and so many others, I wanted to somehow figure it out. I wanted to be a part of the answer.
And now a father, Clay says he's been impacted even more by the devastation of the case.
I mean, there's no question when you think about the worst possible scenario of what could happen to your children, this is it.
10 months later, in August of 2002, the case was at a standstill. The Penn State Paranormal Research Society requested that Carla Barron, a nationally recognized psychic profiler,
Can you tell me what's
come in to aid police in their investigation.
That just gives you an indication as to how desperate they were for answers, some sort of solution. They were ready to listen to anyone who might have a clue.
We're looking at any avenue possible at this point in the investigation that we can use.
The chief asked me if I was willing to, entertain this, and I was like, absolutely, I mean, police investigators use people like her all the time.
I see a carving on a tree. All of a sudden we're finding these things, which is telling me that we're close to finding Cindy. He's watching me right now. He's watching to see if I come up with something, and I have come up with a lot of things.
Carla Barron joined me on the phone to talk about this case and the role she played in it.
Cindy Song was pretty much the first big case that I worked. Since then, I've periodically looked at this case.
As a psychic profiler, she says she approaches investigations differently from police.
I focus in on it, and I slow down time, and I do a 360-degree view of it, and I slow time down so I can see the detail. That's how I work on crime scenes.
Carla came to State College to work on the case soon after being contacted. A camera crew working for the true TV show Psychic Detectives, which focuses on how psychics can help police move forward in tough cases, followed. She described what she believes happened to Song.
At first, I had seen 3 to 4 men that were with Cindy. So I knew that she was abducted. And I knew it was sexual in nature, and I'm just seeing her being loaded into this vehicle. And then I see it wasn't very long before she had crossed over.
Carla had several more insights that she gave to police during her visit.
She's good at what she does, but just unfortunately with us, the information she provided just didn't turn into any credible leads.
And then when the situation came up around Dallas and Hugo Selensky and that whole thing, I took a fresh look at it, and he's involved somehow.
In June 2003, a year and a half after Cindy went missing, Paul Weekly was convicted of burglary in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. In order to reduce his charges, Weekly agreed to give police information pertaining to Cindy's case. His story, two men, Hugo Selinski and Michael Kurkowski, mistook Cindy for a prostitute the night she went missing. They picked her up from State College and took her to the home of one of the men in Hunlock Creek. That's where Weekly says they raped her and stuck her in a safe where she died days later.
It was the only explanation that maybe could be explained.
Weekly first told police that Kurkowski kept Cindy's bunny ears as a trophy, and Selinski killed him and his girlfriend Tammy Fassett in retaliation, burying their bodies in his backyard. Later, he changed his statement, saying Selinski killed them for drug money. Regardless of why, it was a lead for police and they started digging.
So they were digging holes all around his property to find her bones and find anything.
Weekly's tip led to multiple bodies being found in Selinski's backyard, including Kurkowski and his girlfriend. But Cindy wasn't found.
It was a big disappointment, but it was the one lead and the one explanation that I thought held the most promise.
Hugo Selinski was found guilty of murdering Kurkowski and his girlfriend back in 2015. He's now serving a life sentence in prison and is still considered a lead suspect in Cindy's disappearance. 18 years later, every promising clue led to a dead end.
So it's not like we all forgot about Cindy. I never did. I periodically went in and looked.
I did feel like the Cindy Song case was one of the most embraced stories of my whole time here, in the fact that people were so connected. It was such a sad story.
It's Ferguson Township. We really don't have cases that get that big.
Seeing her face, knowing this was a student that just up and disappeared, you kind of wondered this could happen to anyone. And why did it happen to her? Was she's just a victim of some unfortunate circumstance? And I think everyone really related to that.
So it was difficult, and it was personal because it was my case, and I wanted to find her. So obviously, anything I could do to give the family closure meant a lot to me.